Hi, everyone. How are you? You've got Rod Crandall here. I'm Regional Vice President of E4 Insurance, and I'm welcoming you to our brew. This is where we build relationships every week. Really appreciate you being here today. For those of you that may be joining the brew for the first time, I want to welcome you specifically. And those that have been around know that we like to start these brewcasts by celebrating today's national days. So we really have three of them today. You got the National Eat an Extra Dessert Day. Man, I can get behind that. I think that's about every Saturday for me. National Wildlife Day and also National Macadamia Nut Day. So I'm not sure how the three of those go together, but we've got three national days today. So the more you know, right? So on today's brew, we're going to be kicking off Life Insurance Awareness Month here in September. And what we find, and certainly what I find, is that changing our habits and our behavior can be really tough. And it requires a commitment and it requires intentionality. It often requires us stepping out of our comfort zone and to be able to do the right thing, right? And the right thing is really ensuring that our clients' well-being is in place and really motivating our clients to operate in their own best interest. And today we're going to discuss how to do that a little bit better. I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story with you today as well. And hopefully this will be a good use of your time. We should run about a half hour today. We do encourage you to use the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand to ask any questions along the way, we will allow time at the end for some questions as well. And in addition, all attendees are entered into a drawing here today, and that drawing is for a CE voucher and a Starbucks gift card. So when we wrap up this presentation here today, we will pull a raffle and find out who our winner is. Okay. So with that, I want to get started more formally. The title of my presentation here is that it's about answers, not about insurance, right? If you think you're in the insurance business, I think you're not. I think we're in the answers business. And fundamentally, we need to have answers to many things. And I want to walk you through how I view this a little bit. And I want to share a little bit of a personal story, how I really learned that I'm in the answers business. Okay, so at the end of the day, most of the people on this type of call would be wealth advisors, not all, but most. Right. And so from a wealth advisor standpoint, what are we trying to accomplish with our clients? We need to get answers to kind of the fun stuff, if you will. How am I going to retire and send my kids to school? Right. I need to know what it's going to cost. I need to know where I need to put my money. I need to know what kind of budget I have. Right. We select the investments after we understand what we're trying to accomplish, right? So the investments in insurance fund a plan. That plan requires answers. What are we after, right? So how am I going to retire, send my kids to school? How am I going to protect what I'm building, right? What if something potentially goes wrong, right? These are the kind of questions that we need to be asking our clients, not specifically asking them if they want to talk about insurance or if they want to buy insurance. We want to determine what are they after? What answers are they looking for? Right? Well, how am I going to make sure that I'm properly cared for and not run out of money? Right? What happens if I have a long-term care event? Right? What is the effect of the double dipping that could occur inside of my retirement portfolio if that happens? Who's going to make sure that my wishes and my goals are executed in my absence? Right? Who's going to do this? We need these answers. Okay? How will our family legacy be maintained? So these are questions that we need to bring up, and I think it really sets the stage. By the way, if we're doing comprehensive financial planning, being able to come right inside of that context and say, hey, what could potentially keep this plan from coming to fruition, right? We need to have the answers to those things. And so here's the personal story. 2 days ago was Labor Day, 6 years since my mother died. And I really learned this very, very acutely on that day. And so I want to share a little bit of story with you. I get a telephone call on Labor Day 6 years ago from my sister. It says, Roddy, you got to get up here. They found mom floating in Lake Michigan. Now, I'm outside of a suburb of Chicago. Up here is Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's about an hour and 20 minutes from my house. I go, what? My sister goes, I don't know, Rod. You just got to get up here. Come up here now. I'm like, holy cow. I go to my wife. Oh my God. They apparently found my mom in Lake Michigan. What's going on? I have no idea. I've got to go. I don't know what's going on. So I pack the quickest bag that I can. I hop in my car and now I'm up on the expressway, I-94, I guess, going up there, driving way too fast. Googling woman found in Lake Michigan. Wow, I needed some answers and I didn't have any of them. And this was just the start, right? What happened? No idea. Well, I could probably share 20 minutes of this story, but we don't have time for it. So I want to shortcut this. So effectively what happened is she'd been out sailing with her friends on Labor Day weekend, and they were out all day and they were sailing. They came back into a place called the Kenosha Yacht Club where they were having dinner. And after dinner, my mom sort of went missing. Now, apparently, my mom had been sneaking some cigarettes. She had been an ex-smoker, and she's apparently sneaking cigarettes. So that's probably where she was, but she never came back. And people were looking for her. Where's Tammy? Nobody knows where Tammy is. Well, all of a sudden, there's apparently policemen that are showing up. Because why? Because a fisherman had made a telephone call that a woman was floating in the canal. So where this yacht club is set, it's like set back in Lake Michigan. So there's a canal, almost like an L-shaped canal. And a fisherman was in there. They found her. They effectively pulled her out of the water and tried to revive her. Now, her friends that she was out sailing with were all members of the Kenosha Fire Department, because my parents are really tight with that group, because Dale, my stepfather, retired as a diesel mechanic after my mom passed away, by the way. My mom was 58 years old and 2 or 3 years away from retiring, right? She thought she had all of her answers and she didn't make it. Okay. And so the point I'm making about the firefighters is that they were actually the ones that dove in and tried to revive her. So these were her friends. Talk about traumatic for them. And boy, that was really tough to witness, and how much pain they were in that they couldn't save her. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to lay it on thick. I'm trying to give it to you straight. Okay. And the fact is that mom died, and you know what happens when death occurs? If any of you have had that happen around you, we get a chemical imbalance. You know what else happens? We have to plan what amounts to like a wedding, and we have to do that in like a week. We need a lot of answers. The acuteness of this really made me rethink how I do my business, right? And really understanding the answers that we needed. So here's what I really understood. What we needed first and foremost was to understand, is Dale going to be okay? Again, Dale's my stepfather. Is he going to be okay? Right? Mathematically. Well, he'd been engaged with a wealth advisor. That's a friend of mine. And they've done appropriate insurance planning. I knew their math, right? And I knew that Dale was going to be okay. And thank God I could look at him in the worst day of his life and the worst day of my life and say, don't worry about it. We're going to get through this. Now, imagine if we didn't have the answer to that and he wasn't okay. Especially imagine that if I'm an insurance and estate planning professional for 24 years and we couldn't say yes to that. Okay. So this is really, really important. Again, I don't want to put it on thick, but I want you to be thinking about yourself. I want you to be thinking about your family, and I want you to be thinking about your clients. Right. So is Dale going to be okay? Part of that is, how's the math, right? And the math was okay, and we understood that too. They go, well, where is everything? Well, we knew where everything was because they were actively engaged in a planning process. So we could put our hands on stuff very quickly, and thank goodness. So far, we're doing pretty good in the answers that we needed. Here's the one we failed on. What would or did my mom want? Well, see, they started working with an attorney to put together documents, but they never executed their trust or their will documents. And so what that really meant was that we took my mom off life support, right? They pulled her out, they revived her, but she was brain dead. And we voted to take her off life support as a family. So there's two things I want you to hear about this. Number one, don't make your family vote on something like that. I'm not mad at my mom at all, zero. Okay? But it's not a demonstration of love to have your family circle around you and have to vote on whether to terminate your life. Okay. Now, by the way, the vote was not unanimous. Okay. I've got some dysfunction in my family, and maybe some of you do, or maybe you've heard of dysfunction in a family. Well, the vote wasn't unanimous, and that causes problems. Okay. But because she hadn't executed the documents, we had to vote. You know what else we voted on? To bury her. We voted to bury her. I believe she wanted to be buried, but I don't know that she wanted to be buried. Okay. She may have wanted to be cremated. I don't know. I didn't talk to her about it, and I don't know. Right. So again, do you think it's important to me as a son and her daughters and everyone around her, her husband, to do what it was that she wanted? Heck yeah. But we didn't know what she wanted because we missed this one. Right? We didn't know what she wanted. One thing that really snuck up on us that I didn't even think about ever was what would she want to wear in the casket? Never would think that that would be something that we'd even have to determine. It was hard for my family to decide, well, what should we put her in? Right. And so we didn't have these answers and we're all in shock. We have a chemical imbalance. We have to get these answers and then we have to prepare for services. By the way, what kind of service does she want? Don't know. So again, if you just go a little bit deeper on here, what does it mean about the math? Do we have enough for final expenses? Are we still able to retire? Do I need to change lifestyle? Well, I got to tell you, Dale did not have to change lifestyle. He retired as he expected to, but he did change his lifestyle. Why? Because they had bought a big RV, a Negro bus, I guess, and they wanted to, go throughout the country. They bought a little plot in Tennessee to be able to put it on and spend time. And you know what? My mom's gone. And so Dale's lifestyle has changed, but it didn't have to, right? What if we didn't know where everything was, right? The thing that was a little bit clunky about where everything was what does mom have at work? But by the way, the people at work were wonderful. And they connected us directly with the HR person, and we were able to figure all of that out, right? And that's the contact at my mom's work. And as I indicated, demonstration of love is to have a little instruction manual that says, in case of emergency, break glass, right? When we got that call from my mom, right? And so a little bit of an aside, but I think really germane to this conversation is that my mother-in-law, Grace, is still alive, and I have a great relationship with Grace. Grace is off the boat. She's Italian, right? And she grew up in Little Italy, and she is very, very private. Okay, and she's private and doesn't want people in her business, and she's close to the vest. Now we have a good relationship, and I've always respected her privacy. And I got to tell you, she's one of these people that isn't super like huggy, you know, like I'm a hugger, and I'll get hugs from Grace, and Grace will give me kind of that side hug. Again, I'm not talking badly about her. I'm describing to you what's happened here because this was significant. And so when I saw her the first time after my mom had passed away, Grace like literally leapt into my arms. I think she's 83 or 84 years old today. She leapt into my arms and gave me the tightest hug that she's ever given me before. And I got to tell you, I understood what that hug meant. And that hug really meant two things. The front end of that hug was, oh my God, Rod, I love you. I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you're dealing with, right? She was trying to comfort me. But the other part of that is that she was a little more than 20 years older than my mom. And not to be weird about it, but the other part of that hug was, well, maybe it should have been her. I don't mean that weirdly. Okay. But that's what that hug was. And I got to tell you, as a family, I utilize that interaction combined with what I do for a living and my experience to use that to the family's advantage, meaning my sister, no, meaning my wife and my wife's sister. So that's Clara, my wife, and Angela, her sister, and Grace, mom, right, which is my mother-in-law. And so a few weeks after my mom's death, once we did all the services and everything else, what I requested of Grace was, can we sit down and make sure we have the answers to all of these things? And she agreed to do that. And I said, Grace, I don't want to be in your business. I don't want to know your numbers necessarily, but I want to know the answers to these because inevitably we're going to get the call. And that call is going to say, hey, Grace, ... And when that call comes, we're going to need to know the answers. And so she agreed. And we didn't do anything super special. What we did is we pulled up a Word document, or I guess a Google document, and we just put together what amounts to a one-pager. It might be 1.5 pages. And we said, okay, well, where are all of your stuff? Where is everything? Well, here's where it all is. Okay. We asked her, right? You want to be buried? Yeah, I already have plots. Well, where are they? Here's where they are. We asked her what she wanted to wear in the casket. She put that together. We asked her specifically what she wanted for her services. By the way, does she want music played? Does she want pictures? Does she want the pictures on picture board, or do they want them electronically? right? We went to that level of minutia because, again, we're going to get that call. It's going to be the worst day in our lives. We're going to have a chemical imbalance, and we're going to be able to have an instruction manual. We're going to be able to just pull this one pager out and go, okay, what answers do we need? And then we can get to executing what needs to be executed, right? And so what I think happens is nobody wants to have that kind of conversation with their mother or their mother-in-law. I don't, you know, I understand that. But if we don't have that, we're putting our family at a significant disadvantage. Now, I want to share something with you. I have no kids. My math is good if something happens to me with Clara, and I've got insurance and all of that. But up until my mom died, we didn't execute our estate planning documents. And it's embarrassing to say, but I was in denial. I mean, I literally thought there's no way. Okay, I'm 47 today, so I was 41 then. Like, there's no way I'm dying prematurely. Now, is that a crazy thing to say for a life insurance specialist who's been in business for 24 years? I guess 18 at the time. It's crazy, but denial is crazy. It's an emotional thing, right? And it's a self-protection thing. Okay, well, I got to tell you, I went from thinking there's no way I could ever die to my mom dying and then thinking I'm going to die immediately. I like panicked. I'm like, oh man, I am not buttoned up. I can't believe this. I can't believe it. By the way, part of it was I have no kids and I thought that my estate plan would be easy. Well, that's a dumb thing to think. It's not easy. What's easy is everything goes to my wife and then whatever doesn't go to my wife goes to my kids. Well, I don't have kids. So when I put together that trust document, we identified dozens of beneficiaries, including charities, families, and friends. And so when I really walked through that, I wasn't buttoned up. I got to tell you, I'll bet you that there's people on this call that are not buttoned up. I'll bet you. Okay. And I would tell you with love, use this as your opportunity to get buttoned up because a demonstration of love is to make sure our families have these answers. Okay. So if we're going to go there, and I shared that personal story, so I want to get it back on track. What do we do with this? How can we even take this to our clients? Okay. I think we take it through our clients by again, having a focus on answers and focusing on touching their heart by asking them what's important to them. So there's maybe 4 different questions I like to ask. Right? Have you considered the impact to your retirement plan if one of you gets sick and needs care, or if you get sick and can't work? Right? So have you considered what that looks like? How do you feel about that? Tell me a little bit more about that. Have you ever seen that happen anywhere else? Right? Well, you're not talking about insurance, are you? No, not directly. I just want to know what is our plan if that happens. We can talk about insurance if it's appropriate in a minute, but this isn't an insurance forward conversation. It's a planning forward conversation. What about would you prefer that your family perform your care or provide it, or would you rather them coordinate it? Right? Boy, well, what do you mean by that? Right? It gets us into a better conversation. If we can get into a good conversation, we can really determine what's important to people and we can educate them on what their options are, which often include insurance. Insurance is a very important tool. It's just that people don't want it. They don't want what it is, they want what it does. They don't really want to talk to me, the agent, right? They want to talk to somebody who has their best interest at heart, which ironically is me, the agent or the advisor, right? And if you're a wealth advisor, you're in the best spot ever to facilitate this kind of conversation, in my opinion. By the way, if you happen to be a CFP, you're more or less required to have this type of conversation. Would you like me to stress test your financial plan in the event that any of these things occur? Probably my favorite one is what's important to you regarding your legacy, right? A lot of people don't think about that. It can be a big term. Some people don't care anything about it. Others do. But when you really start thinking about it and you give them the opportunity to do so, you might be surprised what you hear, right? I had no idea that I needed dozens of beneficiaries when I really sat down and said, well, what is important to me? I have some charities that are important to me. I've got family members that are important to me. I've got friends that are important to me. And by the way, my wife the same way. We're giving an opportunity for people to think about that, express that, and take action on it, right? And our job really at the end of the day is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest because left to their own devices, sometimes they don't do that, right? And so just things to think about and some suggestions on opening it up, okay? So by having the proper planning, right, what it does is it creates a context. in the planning process. Because it isn't about you need some insurance and how much does the insurance cost. If it's about that, we're either not talking about it, they're ghosting you, or they're picking the lowest number on a page, right? So we need the planning process to create that context. Well, what plans? Well, the financial plan, okay? Perhaps a business succession plan, right? What's your plan for going into business with your partner's spouse, right? Are you aware of that? How do you feel about that? What's your plan? Where are we going to get the liquidity? By the way, insurance above almost everything else provides liquidity. Insurance at the end of the day is basically cash. We have a problem because we've died or become disabled in some form or fashion, and then we have a solution. The solution is cash that springs and shoves, right? Shoving cash. Cash creates options and it creates liquidity. Okay. So nobody wants insurance, but everybody wants cash. Now, I'm not suggesting we stop saying the word insurance directly, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we pretend it's not insurance. What I am saying is let's focus on what insurance does. Okay, it gets us the answers we need. It provides liquidity that we need at the time that we need it most, creates options, right? Right. What else? The estate plan, right? Well, what does that estate plan look like? By the way, are we subject to taxation? Okay, the higher our portfolios and estate values are, oftentimes the more liquidity issue we may have. Think of somebody that might owe a couple $1 million in estate taxes. Well, good news, you owe a couple $1 million of estate taxes. That means you have a pretty high net worth. Bad news, generally, people with high net worth aren't sitting around with $2 million in cash. So now we're talking about what we have to liquidate within 9 months after a second death, right? So again, insurance can be the solution because it shoves cash at the exact time that somebody needs it. Or an extended care plan, right? I like to call that the retirement portfolio protection. I ask people, what is the double dipping effect that can occur if you've got to go in and grab long-term care need at the same time as trying to maintain your retirement income? Shane Van Patten, a colleague of mine, many of you know, likes to talk about what happens if a $10,000 a month gym membership just shows up in the future. So it's a cash flow issue, right? Cash flow issue. Problem, I need care. Solution, here's some cash, right? And so if we're doing the right work, we have to make sure we have the right context. If we have the right context and we ask the right questions, now we can get consideration from our clients. I think that's the thing we don't get. People go right into quotes and then they don't get consideration. Okay, we need consideration because if we really consider this, we go, yeah, you know what? I need some liquidity. And you know what? I need some insurance, but I don't want to pay too much. You see, if you get someone there, that's where you want them. Yeah, I can definitely see that I need that. Okay. If we don't get them there, again, they're either ghosting us or they're not talking to us at all, or they're just trying to pick the lowest number on a page, right? And so by having the right planning context, we can have the right kind of conversation. We can get consideration, and consideration is really permission to educate on what our options are. Right? And if we educate on what our options are, it almost always becomes very obvious that insurance has a spot somewhere, usually. Okay. And so the issue with this is that change is hard. It turns out that change is very hard. Okay. The thing about change is that you either change on purpose intentionally. You know what? I'm going to amend my process right now. I'm going to start asking these questions. Or change is thrust upon you because maybe you get that telephone call. Okay, I was changed in an instant when I got that telephone call. Okay. I have a friend of mine who's a clinical psychologist. He taught me this about 5 or 6 years ago. I guess it had to be longer than that because it was before my mom died. So we're going to call it 7 or 8 years ago. Really blew my mind. He says, Rod, people respect wisdom, but they obey pain. I go, whoa, whoa, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what I think it means. There's not one person that's on this call or will listen to this recording that doesn't believe that it's wise to talk about insurance and implement insurance. Not one of us, not one of us. But I guarantee you there's a number of us, and again, I say it with respect, but there's a number of us that are obeying our pain. What's the pain? Oh my gosh, I got to get somebody in an underwriting process. That's going to take months. Oh my gosh, what if a client gets declined or rated up? Are they going to be mad at me? Are they going to leave the investment, move the investment portfolio? Oh gosh, I don't want these people to think I'm a life insurance agent. That might be the worst one. What I found is that it's not always pain, it's sometimes absence of pain. Hey, you know what? I've got a very robust practice. My AUM is beautiful. My recurring revenues through the charts. I've got a great income. Why do I want to change when I have everything that I need and even more? Right. And I would tell you that's unique for each one of you, but I would suggest to you that the reason we want to do that is because our clients count on us, especially the CFPs in the group. I don't want to come on too heavy on that. But if the CFP doesn't bring these things up, maybe our clients think they're not that important. And by the way, if you're not bringing it up, who is bringing it up? And I would tell you that either nobody's bringing it up or your competition is bringing it up. And if your competition is bringing it up and they happen to be well-trained insurance people, then they might implement the insurance and then say something like, hey, I'm kind of surprised you've been working with that wealth advisor for the last 17 years and they haven't brought this up, huh? Wonder, how do you feel about that? If you're open to it, I'd love to give you a second opinion on what you're doing on the investment side of things. Now, again, I said I didn't want to put it on too thick. I'm just saying it how it is. You think those conversations aren't happening today. They are. They are. And so again, it's become incumbent upon us to do the right thing for our clients, to have these hard conversations, to give them an opportunity to demonstrate their love to their families. Okay. And so there's the point I'm making here on the right-hand side, is that our job is really to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest. So here's a couple of tips that I've found, again, in 24 years of working. And I've done work with over 100 different wealth advisors on a point of sale basis. So by the way, to the extent that you like what you're hearing, but you don't feel that you understand how to amend your process, or maybe you don't even want to go there, certainly I'd potentially be willing to help you, either coach you up for some kind of plan to get there, or potentially utilize me on a joint work scenario. My first list of do nots is don't lead with illustrations. Illustrations are 12 pages, 17 pages, and 34 pages. They're very confusing, and they're effectively for attorneys at the end of the day. Now, note that I didn't say don't share illustrations, just don't lead with them, right? Lead with a summary when we've pulled together quotes, but only pull together quotes once you have had a proper planning conversation. Don't ask them to buy insurance. Ask them instead to fund their plan. What's going to fund your plan, right? Not you don't need insurance. You need to be able to fund the plan. Okay. Don't cite statistics. Now, statistics are okay, and I think they're meaningful and they're important. But at the end of the day, any statistic just kind of rolls off. That's not me, right? Because what's going to happen to me is I'm either going to need it or not. It's 100% or zero. It's not 50% or it's not 70% of those that are 60 years old are going to have some sort of long-term care event, which is the statistic we hear. The real statistic for you, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, is either going to be 100% or zero. Which one's it going to be, and how do you feel about it? Right? And don't argue with clients. If I'm going to argue at all, it's not going to be about whether they're going to implement insurance or not. It's going to be, how are they going to fund their plan? You told me that this was really important, but I don't see how the math isn't mathing, right? That's what I want to challenge clients on, right? Is that idea of being able to touch their heart. If you want to implement insurance with me and my wife, you have to understand that I really care about one thing, which is my promises to my wife. And so if you're going to challenge me in any way, shape, or form, you got to challenge me on, well, Rod, how are you going to be able to fulfill your promise to your wife? Right? You try to use a tactic that I've learned, probably even used, Rod, I mean, what are we talking about here? $100 a month? I mean, come on. Well, that's not going to get me. Okay. It's not $100 a month. And I'm not a huge fan of insurance for what it is, but I'm a huge fan for what it does, right? Which in my case is fulfilling my promises to my wife. So how about some do's? I've alluded to this. You have to touch the heart before you touch the mind. If you don't touch the heart, implementing insurance is going to be very, very, very unlikely. Okay. Because if we're just looking at the cost is too much. I believe that. I think any cost is almost too much for insurance if we're just going to look at it that way. So we've got to touch the heart first. Then we can pull together numbers and we can make the decision with our mind second. Okay. This is crucial in my opinion. We've already indicated we have to have a planning conversation and understand that it's not an event. So we get the client to effectively take action and move into underwriting. We have to set up appropriate expectations. We didn't just write a check and this is done. We have to qualify. And that qualification program or process can take weeks. It can actually take months in some cases. And so once again, we have to really identify that this is a process. It's not an event. I like to ask right away if they have a personal experience, because at the end of the day, I want to know if they have a personal experience. And if they don't, I want to maybe share my personal experience. And if they don't have a personal experience and you don't have a personal experience, this is where you could borrow a story like mine or another story that you've heard around you from your neighbor or your nephew, right? Or your friend, right? Because again, that's how we really touch the heart. When you do it right, as I alluded to, they're going to go, yeah, this is important, but I still don't know about that insurance. That's good. That's what we want. Okay. People aren't just going to automatically write checks because we did this, but they're going to understand why they're writing the checks. And by the way, until we have a good idea of why they're going to write a check, we shouldn't show numbers. Okay. So the idea that this sale is made in the fact finder, that's what I was taught at Northwestern Mutual in the year 2000. Well, I think what they meant was we have to understand why someone's going to buy. And if we can do that in our discovery meeting, really understanding what's important to them, and then we show them how they can demonstrate that through the use of our products, right? I like to express premiums as a percentage of income or net worth, right? Any premium at a flat dollar amount is a lot. But what if it's 1% of your total net worth? Is that an egregious amount of money? What if it's 1/10 of 1%? Right? Are you saying we should put none of your money into this scenario? So you start expressing it as a percentage, it puts it better in context, right? Conducting meetings with both spouses is very important, especially if you're going to touch the heart. There's usually one spouse that is more touchy-feely than the other. Generically, it's usually the woman, but not always. I'm pretty touchy-feely myself as a man, but we need to be able to have both spouses, because if you're dealing with just an analytical person, they're going to blow off the heart side of it. And they blow off the heart side of it, they're just going to want quotes from you. And if they just want quotes from you, they're looking for quotes so that they can either say no or they can pick the lowest number on a page. Okay. And then the shameless plug is maybe you need to partner with an insurance specialist if you like what's been said, but you're not comfortable doing this, right? And so again, everybody wants answers. And as I've described to you, if we don't ask them, who is going to? If we do this right, we can really get clients where they need to go. All insurance at the end of the day, in my opinion, is, do I have a risk? Do you have a risk? Do I care about this risk? And then ultimately, what are my options? And that's how we get to that consideration as I've described to you, right? And if we can do that, we're allowing them or facilitating them to demonstrate their love. Now, I've said that a couple of times. I hope that doesn't seem too cheesy to you guys. I really believe that. This is a demonstration of love, okay? Because we're going to get that call. You are going to get the call. And are you ready for that call? And are your clients ready for that call? That's what we want to do. So what's next here as we wrap up in the last 5 minutes? You know, we do have a newsletter comes out every Monday. We do have brews every Wednesday, like you're on right now. In fact, next week, and as a continuation of Life Insurance Awareness Month, we're going to be, again, doubling down on the idea that stories sell. And you're going to hear a couple of our other partners here at E4 discuss how life insurance has impacted people near and dear to them as well. Okay. And so we do have a marketing tab too. We've just had a revamp of the website. If you haven't been on it, there is amazing tools and really everything that you need to integrate insurance into your practice is there. And if you need help, you can reach out to me, right? At the end of the day, this type of work allows us to do the right thing, and it allows us to drive revenue. It allows us to protect our own assets under management, and it creates what a mentor of mine called is competitive immunity, right? Because our clients are somebody else's prospects, right? So I'll take any questions if any of you have. And while we wait for those, again, remind you that the recording of this session and the entire library that we have is available on our website as well. So if you're like me and you're in the car, you might want to just pop this on. You can listen to a couple of these right in the car. And so if there's any questions, again, go ahead and step forward or go into the chat. And then Danielle, I guess it's about time for us to do our giveaway. And so I've got to pick a number. So let's use number 7, Danielle. Can you let us know who our lucky winner is for our CE voucher and the Starbucks gift card?
Yeah, today's winner will be Debbie Struthers. Congratulations, Debbie. I will be in touch.
Oh, excellent. Congratulations, Debbie. And so that concludes today's brew, but I'll stick around for just another minute or two if anyone has a comment or a question. Otherwise, I hope this has been very valuable for you. Please reach out to your RVP. What I find is that if you're going to intentionally do this type of business, what I find is that you ought to suggest I ought to suggest you finding 3 opportunities to have these kind of discussions. I believe dramatically in the idea of momentum. And if this isn't already in your process, we've effectively got to get it in your process. So I might suggest that you put together 3 names, reach out to your RVP and have a conversation with them. Indicate, okay, well, where are the opportunities for planning for these individuals and what ought I ask them so that I can get into that conversation and do it in an authentic way. Right. I find that that's a problem that some of my advisors have had in the past. They go, I want to change this. I want to do a little bit more work in this area, but I feel uncomfortable bringing it up because I haven't brought it up before. If you're having any trouble with that, reach out to your RVP or reach out to me directly. So with that, I appreciate you guys and have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the weather. It looks like summer's still sticking around for a little while here. So appreciate you all and have a great day.